Hi, this is Nathan Lehman. I'm at the Ultra Running Company, and today we are going to be reviewing the Salomon S-Lab Sense 7. Let's jump right into it. The Salomon S-Lab Sense 7 is one of the premier shoes in the Salomon trail running category. For the Ultra Running Company, we consider this to be a low drop, minimally cushioned trail running shoe. So we'll get into what all that means in a minute. But from Salomon's standpoint, this is the shoe that they would put on folks for a racing type atmosphere. Generally speaking, lighter folks. This is a more minimal shoe, something that doesn't have a whole lot of cushion on it, but helps you to go fast. So we consider this one of the very best trail racing shoes that we've come across. To give you an idea of what goes into the Salomon S-Lab Sense 7, this is a shoe with a 4mm drop, meaning that there is 4mm more cushion in the heel than in the forefoot. Salomon advertises this shoe as having 18mm of cushion in the heel and 14mm of cushion in the forefoot. What does that mean in real life? It means if you're wearing this shoe, you are going to feel the ground. You're going to feel the ground in the Salomon, but you're not going to get beat up by the ground. And the reason for that is by looking at what's on the bottom of the shoe. The very first versions of the Salomon S-Lab Sense were a pure racing flat. They had traction here and they had almost no tread at all in the back. They lasted about 100 miles, sometimes 200, but they were designed very specifically to get you through a race as quickly as humanly possible. As they've evolved over 7 generations, they've added a little bit more grip to the heel of the shoe. They've added a little more lifespan to the rubber itself so that you're not blowing a whole lot of money on almost no miles. And one of the things that they've kept the same is what they call a profile film in the shoe. This is basically a rock plate that goes throughout the shoe. It's made of a very thin plastic. In the case of the S-Lab product line, it's an exceptionally thin, exceptionally durable, what appears to be a woven plastic. That may be cosmetic, it may not be, but it is a very different profile film in the S-Lab series of shoes than it is in any of the other trail shoes they have. Quite a bit thinner, but what that film allows you to do by moving with your foot is keep the feel for the ground, but not have to worry about the rocks coming through. So in my experience, this is probably the most minimal shoe you can wear without being concerned about rocks pointing, sticking through the shoe and hitting you in the foot. So some of that either abrasions from it, just bumps and bruises that you get from rocks coming through. The S-Lab Sense line has fantastic protection against that, and you can be really confident when you go out that you're getting great proprioception, that feel for the ground, but not getting beat up on it. So in that regard, fantastic. A big change on the S-Lab line from the S-Lab 6 to the 7 is you're gonna not be able to see this very well, but a complete lack of an insole in the shoe. This is basically meant to recreate a barefoot feel for you. They're trying to make this as light as humanly possible. And in doing that, they advertise a men's size 9 as being 7 ounces. Now when you get up to my size foot, you're gonna gain a couple ounces. 9 ounces is what the size 13 in this shoe wears. So really this is one of the very few size 13 trail running shoes that I can put on and be well under 10 ounces. So really nice in that regard. What that does compared to some of the heavier shoes or some of the more cushioned shoes is this is the type of shoe that you're going to pick through really technical terrain on. It doesn't mean you're going to run it slower, but you do need to be aware of where you're stepping, and you get a nice feel for the ground. You can kind of glide through stuff and really count on your feet to give you the feedback that a more cushioned shoe would not. Now the flip side of that is a more cushioned shoe. You can typically just bomb through that technical terrain. So just really two different styles of running. Some people prefer one over the other. Some people like to switch back and forth. The bottom line for a runner like me, at or around 170 pounds, is that I can wear this shoe for somewhere between 20 to 40 miles, absolutely max. If I go over that, I'm really gonna get some feedback through my feet, and I tend to choose for myself personally something with a little more cushion. But under that, I'd say a 50K range, I can't imagine a shoe that gives you more feedback, more protection, and makes you feel faster than this S-Lab Sense 7. A couple cosmetic changes on the top, also lighter weight. They've actually taken the portion of the upper that used to be on the outside. So a lot of shoes you'll see some external bonding. They've moved that to the inside, and so what you get on the outside is just a full single piece of fabric. It's held together on the inside by that bonding. If you look real carefully, you can see where it is on the outside here, but it's a nice smooth surface. This shoe, because it's so lightweight and because it has generally a porous upper, really drains water well. This is the type of shoe that you can run through a river on. By the time you get a half a mile away, especially in drier situations, you're gonna feel most of that water has either evaporated or gone away, and you're back to running in a very lightweight shoe. So fantastic for some of those runs where you are running through rivers, anything along those lines, fantastic for warmer weather. Other than that, one of the couple defining factors with Salomons in general, and specifically with their S-Lab line, one is their pre-laced system and the ability to hide that lace in a lace garage. So basically what you do instead of tying your shoe is you're going to pull your shoe tight, you're going to put this, lock this right down, and then you're going to tuck everything into this little pocket on the top of the tongue. Now, one really nice feature that they've moved to, and that my understanding is that Salomon will be moving to across the board, is this lace garage now loads from the top on these S-Lab shoes. In the past, it's from the bottom. Just a little tougher to deal with, so this is really a convenience factor. But the really nice thing about these quick laces is that they're a very durable, non-stretchy material. So the S-Lab is really going to lock your foot in place, which brings us to that fit. For a foot of my shape, this is an exceptionally well-fitting shoe with a very somewhat narrow heel, a really solid lock-in around over the instep, and then a little bit wider on the toe box so that it fits the foot well. In my experience, this is one of the very few shoes that I'll actually wear barefoot. Might put a little bit of lube on the side of my toes just to make sure they're not rubbing, but a really comfortable feel on this, or with a very thin sock. This is not a shoe that I'd wear with a thicker sock because you're kind of defeating the purpose of that locked-in feel. The last piece of that fit system is that inside the shoe, the tongue comes down and basically wraps around your foot. So when you put your foot into the shoe, you're basically putting it into the tongue and holding it in place with no seams at all. So very comfortable in that regard. So again, overall review on this shoe is, in my opinion, one of the very best go-fast trail shoes you can buy. A couple of caveats, and this is going to bring us into the second half of our review. This is also about the most expensive shoe you can buy from Salomon at $180. The technology that goes into it, the limited release of it, in their mind justifies it, and if you want to go quickly, you'd be hard-pressed to find a nicer shoe on the market to do so. However, a really interesting move that Salomon has made in the last in this season is they've introduced a second shoe called the Salomon Sense Pro 3. In the past, the Sense Pro was more of a race/training shoe, but the Sense Pro 3 is actually the Sense S-Lab Sense 6 with some very, very minor changes. So I'm going to bring this up and show you two shoes. On my right is the Salomon S-Lab Sense 6 Soft Ground. On my left is the Salomon Sense Pro 3. Just looking at them, if you ignore the colors, this shoe is identical from the outside. There are two minor changes that you can see when you look at the shoe. One is in this small section right here, and in these two sections right here, they've chosen to cover it with a non-porous material. My guess is that that's for durability. It's a super small change. The second one, if you look at the Pro-Feel film on the bottom of the shoe, you'll notice that the S-Lab has that really nice super thin material that I talked about with the S-Lab Sense 7. The Sense Pro 3 has a slightly thicker, slightly less flexible material. While still very flexible, the Pro-Feel film in the Sense Pro 3 is going to give you, it's just going to add a little weight and that sort of thing. Differences other than that, slightly more cushion on the heel area of the Sense Pro 3 compared to the Sense 6, and actually an additional weight to the shoe as well. So we looked at the stats of this shoe in the Salomon catalog. Technically, the S-Lab Sense 6 Soft Ground is a 4mm drop shoe with 20mm in the heel and 16mm in the forefoot. Technically, the Sense Pro 3 is a 4mm drop shoe with 18mm in the heel and 14mm in the forefoot. When we measured them on our measurement tool, we actually got them both at 21mm in the heel and therefore 17mm in the forefoot to keep that 4mm drop on the shoe. So what we see is these two shoes are almost identical. Last season's S-Lab and this season's Sense 3. What differences are there aside from the technical differences I just pointed out? Last season's S-Lab was $180. The Sense Pro 3 is $130. In our minds, it's very difficult to justify the additional $50 to go up to the red shoe versus $50 less to go with what we think is a pretty attractive blue and orange shoe. There are also some other colors, obviously. So if you want to have every single advantage possible, you're going to want to go with the latest version of the S-Lab. For the rest of us, this Sense 3 is really an amazing deal. I've never seen a shoe company just take their top of the line product, make some very, very minor tweaks, and introduce such a high quality shoe for significantly less money. So one very important thing to point out, I actually compared the Sense Pro, the S-Lab Sense 7 in the standard version to the S-Lab Sense 6 in their soft ground version. The major difference there is going to be just the width of the actual lugs, the depth of the actual lugs, I'm sorry. You're going to have quite a bit more on the soft ground, which is designed to go through more of a muddy situation, something where you really need that grip, whereas in sandy and drier situations, the standard S-Lab Sense is going to be the way to go. They kept that same soft ground feel in the and depth of lug in the in the Sense Pro 3. So you're going to have some more grip on it. That's going to raise you up off the ground in hard-packed, dirty situations. This is going to be a bit more, might raise you off just a little bit and not give you quite that nimble feature that the S-Lab Sense 7 has. So again, really comparing these two shoes, my favorite race shoe probably ever made for those distances from about 5K up until about 50K, and a really, really fantastic solution at a lower price point for really any situation other than that very tip of the spear. So we have both of them at the Ultra Running Company. We think they're both fantastic, but we also think you ought to come in, give them a try, and see if the difference between the two is enough for you to spend an extra $50. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, please put them in our comments sections. Let us know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for being a part of our review.